way. I will be introducing your questions for him during his chat, and so please do keep them coming. I'll get out of the way now.
All right, excellent. I'm gonna see if I can share my screen here. That's probably the most important thing, right?
Awesome. Let me get out of here then.
Let me see if I can take control back, right? That is the deal.
Patrick, while we're waiting, I got lightning questions for you.
Sure.
Favorite Star Wars character?
Oh, favorites, man. You know, I want to go with Boba Fett only because of the Mandalorian, but I really like Darth Maul. it's hard to go away from Darth Maul. So
unpopular answer. Interesting. Palpatine, Jackie, thanks for that. Your favorite SQL function? I didn't know if you got to take a crack at that one.
I did. So yes, it's definitely coalesce. That's probably my favorite function. If I had to say another keyword would be union or union all. That's probably another one from a data perspective when putting totals together that I use quite a bit. So that'd be my
absolutely.
Yeah.
Final question. How did you find your way into data? And you are now the CIO of a successful healthcare startup business. It's been long enough to be a business now and not a startup. How did you find your way into data?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I mean, I started out as I'll call it a hardcore programmer. That was really my background of, a degree in computer science and master's degree in information systems. So I thought that would be writing code and being kind of that code junkie was where I was going to spend most of my time. I think I found out maybe 4 or 5 years into it that although I loved developing apps and seeing people use them, the development process and getting to that final point where I'm like, yes, people are using it, they're happy, it looks cool, took forever. In some cases, I was on projects that ran 18 months in some cases, and I worked on a very small sliver of what that final project did. But when it got to the data piece, inevitably they would say, all right, the app works, we're collecting data, how do we now create reports and dashboards? And I found that part to be fascinating. That's what I really liked. And that was, I don't know, 2006, 2007. I think right when the wave of BI and new tools were coming out, we were talking about moving beyond just SQL Server reporting services, but into things like the precursor to Power BI, Tableau is coming out, massively parallel data warehouses, that kind of stuff. So that really excited me, and so I just made the switch to go from software development to business intelligence. And then from there, through a string of thankfully good choices, I guess, maybe a little bit of luck too, doing things like Panoply, doing Alteryx, Power BI, all of that aligned really well, and we had some great wins. And I think that's what sort of propelled me to the CIO role, as those things worked out really well. And that's what I love. Now, of course, that role has other stuff like cybersecurity, which I am horrible at, and so I'm learning all of that. Horrible. I've been on, this is like 4 calls this week on cybersecurity. We are locked down tight. We've taken the course that nothing is allowed in, so we can't really have a breach if we don't let anything. Yeah. So that's kind of where the role for me is. We do data really well, we do software development really well, but there's other things that we're sort of learning as we go. But I think that's expected, right, Trevor? You wouldn't know everything going into a role, and that's
no, not if you're growing. That's great.
Yeah.
Also, I gotta say, I can't say I'm terribly surprised. Being a nice guy, being a guy who pays attention to the data, that has propelled you to the top. So congrats so far. I look forward to hearing from you, and so do all our listeners today, so I'm going to get out of your
way. Great. Hopefully you can see my screen all right. I'm going to go ahead and put this into presentation mode so it looks all right. And as I mentioned, feel free to interrupt me and ask questions along the way, and Trevor will speak out. If you haven't noticed by now, this is very light and informal, so we're going to keep it that way. I've mentioned I felt like death by webinar the last 6 months, 7 months, so we're happy to to do this kind of informal. That means I really won't be reading from the slides at all. In fact, I'm trying to maybe set a Guinness Book of World Records here to have the most amount of memes in a webinar as possible. So that's really the goal. I have also an animated GIF, and I'm gonna have Trevor. This is feedback to you. Is it GIF or GIF? That's
it's like asking, is it Python or R? And then am I just going to get killed right now? Am I just going to disappear into smoke? I'm not going to answer that question.
We are, in my household, we are split. My wife calls them GIFs and I call them GIFs. One son calls them GIFs and the other one calls them GIFs. So we're split right now. Yeah. And as I said, you're going to interrupt me as questions come in. So first meme right away. We are going to be communicating largely through memes. Of course, I'm going to be talking about the different subject matter, as we launch through it. So the main topic is the scalability paradox. And so I wanted to tell a quick story about what it looks like for me. And so the first meme will sort of tell you where I'm coming from. I mentioned I was a hardcore app developer, and one of the apps I worked on right when the iPhone came out was this school directory app, and we had a small startup business that we created, me and two other guys. And when I wrote that code, it was horrible code. It was functional, but in all honesty, it didn't scale. And I remember sitting at the meeting talking to our team of 3 guys, saying, yeah, but this isn't going to scale. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, but we don't have any users, so what difference does it make if I can't build it quick enough to get it in people's hands? And we were facing competition in that market for our directory app. Then it really doesn't matter. So you're stuck in this constant balancing act between I'm writing the code for scale, and scalability takes time to build, and then also for speed. So how quickly can I build it, and how much data can I move back and forth and get it in people's hands? To me, the most important thing, like Trevor, your trivia question about teaching users to use whatever it is you've built, is it's that sort of first proof point where what you built and the analysis you did sees the light of day, and you actually get feedback. And sometimes you put it out there and folks will say, this was not at all what I wanted you to build, or it's a home run right away. Now, I always say do those quick proof points, milestones quickly. Like, we'll put out a Power BI report. It doesn't have any of our branding on it. It doesn't have the colors, just to get feedback. And that's where I think that scalability and balance comes in, where speed, quickly get it built, and then come back and see if you can build it for scale. So that's really the paradox that we're talking about here.
Yeah, Eric Rees from the Lean Startup would definitely be an advocate of your approach here. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and you end up running into what I say is, you sort of previewed the next slide, but where I end up having a lot of other problems that I have to deal with. So I use the Jay-Z song. I had problems. Scalability is not one of them. Usually it's around business logic. That's usually a lot of the problems that I have. And most of the time in healthcare, because some of the issues we're solving are very complicated. If you listen to how insurance rules work, it's very bizarre that in one patient that has Medicare, another patient has Medicaid, and this one has private insurance, they each have separate rules. And programming that into your analysis and into your data load and your ETL job can be a bit challenging. So that's why I say that I've got way more problems to worry about than just scalability right now. And then here's my baseball reference, Trevor. I'm a Chicago, so I'm a White Sox fan, and that's who was in this movie. There you go. Time it all back. So this concept that if you build it, they will come. So why do I talk about this a bit? Is going back to scalability. If it never sees the light of day, if people are never going to use it, then you're back to sort of your chicken and egg problem. I haven't even created what it is people are going to see and use. And in some cases, a lot of analysts out there probably experience this. I had somebody email me, when are you going to build this report? When is it going to be done? When is it going to be published? And I publish and no one uses it. it just sits there. I say it collects digital dust, right?
Mm.
And then other times I build something on a whim because I have my feelers out and I'm listening to what people want. We did this geospatial analysis for some of our patients. No one asked for it. We just thought it was a cool thing to try, and people loved it and ended up turning into a full-blown project. Again, I didn't think scalability when I built that. I thought this is maybe data people want to see, and we got it out there and they started using it. So that was the if you build it, they will come kind of analogy, and scalability wasn't on my mind there, but speed was. How quickly can I build it?
Absolutely.
I'll pause there for a minute, Trevor, see if people have questions. Or
I haven't seen any questions coming in the chat, but I just got to say that it's really kind of brings light to my day to hear a data analyst coming forward and bringing information to light that then has a lot of leverage across an organization. So I think everybody likes to have those wins. I'm sure a lot of people in the chat or people watching now can empathize with or relate to that. Yeah,
it's I think it's one of the, I would say a career trait to have is to listen in conversations. And I think sometimes when we have so many meetings going on and we're in and out, you might check out. You might say, well, this conversation is about HR. It has nothing to do with me. And then a question might come up about, well, we're having a hard time with retention and turnover. Well, is there a way for me to sort of predict who's likely to turn over? There's turnover prediction models. So finding ways to insert yourself, in a nice way, not aggressively, into the business and provide analysis, I think gives you a leg up on everybody else if you're trying to make that progression. So.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm gonna just before we slide into the next one. Do you have any keys on that? Because I think that's something that I think everybody would like to be more effective at, especially if you're a younger analyst, you're not the VP of data. So do you have any clues on that?
Yeah, so one of the things that I recognized as I started to move from position to position was to sort of drop your fear of saying the wrong thing, drop your fear of putting yourself out there. And I think that the term is finding your voice. I think early on I was maybe very self-conscious of what people thought about me, maybe. And I said, well, am I going to sound like an idiot if I say this? And then readily admitting where you're weak, like I mentioned the cybersecurity thing, that has when I enter a conversation, dispels a lot of the problems where people might say, how do you not know that? How can you be so foolish to not understand that? And I say, well, there's just areas I don't know and I'm learning. Same thing here, as like I really don't know anything about HR, right? I've never worked in HR. So yeah. I insert myself into that situation and I say, here's where I'm coming from. This is my view as an analyst. And I want to be in there and try and help. Do you think this would help? And you'll encounter people who don't want any help, and you'll encounter folks that do. And of course, you'll gravitate to the ones who are saying, yeah, I'm really having a hard time with turnover. Can't figure out what's going on with this problem. Just not having fear to speak up and ask questions. That's probably the biggest thing that I learned.
Brilliant. Yeah, something I also heard there was just kind of embracing that you don't know, keeping that curiosity mindset, something that is important as a data analyst, is as important, I think, as an individual. Totally.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's the scalability paradox part. Now, on my journey, I get to talk a little bit deeper about some of the things we did, and also, Trevor, I think the other thing about that career part is learning from your mistakes. And I tend to butcher the Albert Einstein quote, but I think he said something like, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, right? That was I think there's a different word there, but insanity is the word that he used. When I do it, I'm like, how could I be so dumb? Why did I do it that way? And I did the exact same thing and thought it was going to come with a different outcome. So I readily admit times when we made mistakes and did things the wrong way, and I say that because I don't want you to repeat my mistakes. learn from what we did. So my journey in all of this started. I was working for the Joint Commission, which is a healthcare accreditation company, and that was doing programming and a little bit of data work. And then I said I want to just do data full time. And when I got that job, the person came to me and they said, I just want you to build a data warehouse. Now they had no idea what they were asking, right? So I came back and I said, well, 18, 24-month build. It's going to be about $750,000. We're going to need a data engineer, someone to do ETL, someone to build reports, and someone to write SQL code. So all told, we're $1.25 million, $1.5 million in on this thing if you really want to do it. And the response was, yeah, just go build it. That sounds good. I really like that. So that started my journey. And well, I know I'm coming from, I did a lot of programming, but I've never built a full-blown data warehouse with dimension tables and fact tables and looking at, should I do it as a star schema or a Snowflake schema? So went on Amazon, got a ton of books, did a ton of reading, and then just went to work and started building it out. And we got maybe 3/4 of the way through, and the whole thing just fell apart. Didn't work. Even with the great team that we had, it was pretty brutal. So and that was all SQL Server based. Then we found Microsoft Parallel Data Warehouse, and we started building in there, and that still didn't go as well as we wanted it to. Finally, we just said we're just going to build straight dimension and fact tables. We'll keep the relationship simple. In essence, build little data marts. And that ended up working out really well until we get to the scalability problem. It was really hard to maintain because it wasn't well designed, and we readily admit that. So what did we do? Well, we went to Snowflake and we tried to do that there. And to talk about the scalability problem, this is sort of the hidden issue when it comes to scalability is how much data am I going to move? And if I build it and they come, is my estimate on how much data I'm going to move correct? And in our case, we were wildly off. We thought we were going to be moving 80 to 90 gigabytes of data a month. It turns out we were moving less than 10. So we ended up way over purchasing and underutilizing. And part of it's we actually wrote really good SQL code in this, and our ETL jobs worked well. The other thing is for us, Snowflake was a little bit of if Snowflake's a housefly or a nuclear bomb, we were trying to kill the housefly with a nuclear bomb instead of a fly swatter, and that was our issue. It became readily apparent. I love the platform is great if you're huge, but maybe for us it wasn't a really good fit. So we started building, and then we backed the whole thing out and went to our original database. This kind of sounds like an unmitigated disaster, right? It really does. So we go from, hey, everybody, our Power BI reports are running on Snowflake, to forget all that, they're back on SQL Server again. That's really what we ended up doing. Now, so I still kept my job through all of that, which is great, because we made sure stuff still ran and we had version control in place and all of that. So it was fine. But then I walked into a meeting and I said, you know what? I found this great tool called Panoply. We're just going to rebuild the entire data warehouse in that. And my team, to their credit, said, sounds good. I like it. It's just like mind blowing that they would not give me a hard time about it. But I'd say the other part about the career in developing people is surrounding yourself with people who are willing to learn, but also they're not yes men either. Like 2 of my guys are very challenging and put forth great ideas. So surrounding yourself by both people who are great thinkers and also willing to learn. That's been probably one of the other main features, is always learning every day something new. That's part of it. So that began our Panoply endeavor, where we started building all of the dimension and fact tables we built before, plus new projects went into Panoply. We were not doing incremental loading in our data warehouse before. We were doing fill and kill, so full truncate table, and then reload it. So at a certain point, again, scalability, the job wouldn't run in an 8-hour period overnight from midnight to 8 a.m. or 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. So that morning nursing shift that came in wasn't getting fresh data anymore because the job was taking too long to run. Awesome. So Panoply came with that incremental loading by default, and we were able to knock that out really quickly.
Awesome.
Question, Trevor? Comments?
Yeah, you know what? I haven't seen only one comment so far on this slide. It says they it's giving them a case of the Mondays, which I can relate to. Good callback there.
That's good.
But I think that the 2 parts, I think my 2 takeaways are, one, or my curiosity is, one, how did you go about the process of kind of estimating and evaluating what it would take to build this out, kind of having a vision for that? I think that would be helpful for folks who are just kind of thinking about this, what this means to them. And I'll let you answer that question before I get to the second one.
Yeah. So it's the decision to do the rebuild, we started with, this is in a way sort of common sense. This will be sort of a no-brainer to people. We started off with obviously the most important thing, and I really like, there's a book called Lean Analytics. It's a great book. And in there, it talks about the one metric that matters. And that one metric for us is census. It's heads in the beds. If we were to relate that to Marriott or Hilton hotels, it's how many rooms are booked that night, right? Percentage of occupancy. So we started there and said, that's the most important thing that we need to know and we need to tell people. So we moved that over to Panoply first. And then we just went down the line and said, census actually is very simple to do. So we knew that wasn't going to take very long. The more difficult stuff is our accounts receivable and our invoicing and aging. Those are massive data projects, very important. It's probably number 2 on our list. And we knew that would be a week or 2, which is scary to think that it is that fast, but it was a week or 2 to move that over. But still, it wasn't 18 months, to rebuild everything. And then we just worked our way down the list until we got to some of the things that people use once a month that we could move at the end of the project, rather than census is every single day. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 times a day that gets updated. And then we had wonderful COVID to worry about through all of this. So as soon as we started to do Panoply, then talk about an Excel spreadsheet problem. Our medical record vendor did not put any of the infection control information into their product until the end of April and early May. So we were operating 2 months out of Excel spreadsheets. Wow. And so again, in my mind, I'm thinking, how am I going to load this into the data warehouse and get it into Power BI reports? And that's where the Panoply connector to those spreadsheets came in, and it worked brilliantly as long as people filled the data out correctly, of course. So yeah, no row limitation limits for us. Thankfully, that wasn't a problem. But yeah, that's pretty much where we started. Is pick those winners first, those high value targets, what everybody's going to see. And then I'd say I have a slide called shameless plug. I have another shameless plug. Don't feel bad marketing the heck out of yourself. I mean, don't be humble. But I readily admitted to everybody, this is Panoply. That's what we're using. So our folks know where the data is coming from. And this is why we made the switch to the tool. And tell me how you like everything now. Does it run better? Is it refreshing as quickly as you want it to? And our financial team was actually the first one that said to us, usually we have to wait the next day to get all of the invoices to show in the data warehouse, and now it happens every hour. It's amazing. I love whatever Panoply is. We love it. So that's how it comes about. It was really, really interesting to see. They sort of know what Panoply is. It's kind of like they know a little bit about what Alteryx is, but they don't know totally. So that's how we do it.
Awesome. So just to kind of recap your answer on the kind of evaluating the transition period, what it sounds like is, what is the most valuable leverageable data, mapping that against what is the complexity and the duration it's going to take to move that over. I think that makes a ton of sense. I work in marketing and growth. I would look at what's the bottom of the funnel, what's the effort to get that into the system, build up from there. But yeah, absolutely makes a ton of sense. We do have a question on this on the specifics of how you're working with Panoply and specifically loading and data. The question is from Jackie, what are some of the reasons for fill and kill versus incremental load in your opinion? So it sounds like it kind of reverses the kind of intuition around what you've gone with, but yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, so it takes sort of 2 perspectives. One is just technical limitations. So we are a little bit beholden to our application vendor. So we don't own the EMR product. It's owned by a company called Point Click Care in Toronto, Canada. And for some of the data tables in the database, for whatever reason, they decided not to put any audit information on those tables. So there's no create, update, delete information. There's no timestamps, there's no revision dates, and there's no created data. So it makes it really hard to do incremental loading when the data is presented that way. There is a workaround, there's a way to do it, but that's a scalability problem. How fast am I going to be able to build it when they've done that? So
Right.
when that happens, unfortunately, it's a fill and kill, it's a truncate deal.
Yeah.
There. The other thing is, how big is the data set? So for some of our data, like patient vitals, the vitals get collected every 5 to 6 minutes for every patient, 24 hours a day. So that row of the data table is, I think, I don't know, 250 million rows. It's somewhere in there. Conversely, the medication table is really small, because every patient is only going to be on between 0 and maybe at the most 40 different meds. That's a lot.
40.
Yeah, it's a 40. Well, it includes vitamins and other stuff, but I would also say durable medical equipment. Most people are going to have eyeglasses, walker, cane, and maybe one other thing. So incremental loading might just be a little bit overkill if you're worried about how long it's going to take you to code that. Now, talk about Panoply for a minute. When you load a data table and you tell it which field is the incremental key. So if it's a revision need, if there's another ID field, you just give it that value and tell it whenever that changes, I want you to update the data or load it or delete it, however you want to do that incremental processing. That's brilliant. Remember, when we used to do this in SQL Server integration services, you would have to code all of that. It sucked, right? So and then testing it, which is the other part of scalability, is I click it to load the data in and I can immediately see if it starts working, right? Where some of those jobs that would run in SQL Server integration services are running on that server, as opposed to Panoply, where it's running in the cloud. So the speed with which that data is coming in goes really fast. The other comment I'll make is, we talk about learning something new. We never loaded data through Amazon S3 buckets, and we started doing that with Panoply, and that has made a world of difference for us too, as far as speed goes. So yeah, lots of reasons why you would want to do the truncation or not do the truncation over the incremental loading. You just have to look at the data and decide how it fits and what's going to work.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I'm terribly surprised that you're working with data that we were it was out of your control. Like, whoever thought that would ever happen, right?
Yeah. It gets me on a roll about Kronos. Kronos is the other one that the data they give us sometimes is missing. So if an employee leaves and then comes back, we don't have the intermediary step. We just have their most recent activity, and we've found a way to get around that. But like, I want to give somebody credit if they've worked here 7 years, they took a year off and then came back, right? I got to be able to calculate that, and it's brutal. And that's not really a incremental or a truncate problem as it is the actual application developer not providing that data to us. So
interesting. Yeah. No. So it sounds like, so if I was to sum it down to one thing, is does it exist, or can you create a primary key or some type of identifier for that row to enable you to do incremental loading? Outside of that, looks like you're going to have to, I'm going to say, euphemism, find a workaround or hack it, however you want to say.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So this whole cybersecurity thing, why that matters, and this is why I talk about putting feelers out there and paying attention in meetings and listening to conversations. There was a direct relationship to the problem we're having with data not containing revision dates and audit trails in cybersecurity. And one of that is being able to track when people access the system. And so the solution that the cybersecurity guy did was to hash the entire row of data and then create a hash key off that. Yeah. And if that hash key changes, then the underlying data has changed. And that's how you know how to reload just that one row. That's how we're trying to get around the problem of not having an incremental identifier.
Yeah, I think that is the kind of the common thinking around that. But I mean, I feel like, you're running into a 1 in a million billion scenario there, yeah. But you're probably still fine. So thanks. I think that was a really good answer to the question. I think we can kind of keep on moving here.
Yeah, so that's I'll just continue off of let's rebuild the data warehouse. This will be great, and then talk about what I use the term agile because I don't want to confuse agile with agile programming or agile software development. This is really, when I use the word, I mean how quickly can I go in, and when I build something, can I make changes to it? Can I build prototypes really quickly, which of course is related to the concept of agile software development, but I'm using this more in a data, data method. And so my next meme is around Alteryx. Now we're Alteryx users, and I'm not trying to sell Alteryx, obviously, but something like that. So if it could be a Talend, it could be Paxata, it could be Nime, it could be RapidMiner, whatever it is. Those tools have helped us get up to speed really quickly and move data around fast. A lot of questions I get asked is, do we have a data scientist? I don't. None of us are data scientists. My guys are really just they're BI folks. They're data analysts, and some of them started not knowing anything about how to load data, about ETL, but they use these tools and have done some amazing work. And actually, the most recent one, he just passed the advanced exam on Alteryx, and he came from not knowing anything, and he's done really well. So those tools have gotten us to a place where we can move data around from all different sources, apply all the business rules that we want, and then load it into wherever it needs to go, whether that's directly into Power BI or if it's into Panoply first or some other destination. So definitely, if you're a small company and you're on a team where you only have 2 data people, I would look at tools like that to help speed up what you're doing. And now I will say, on the scale side, Alteryx, the scalability is debatable there. Once you get into hundreds of millions of rows, you might be moving on to something else. But just as a quick start, proof point, prototype, it's a good way to go. Other one is, what I really liked about Panoply, there were a number of things that turned us onto it. And Trevor, you already asked about, the pricing and scaling of stuff. On all of the other platforms, we were charged based on how much data we moved back and forth, and how many people were accessing it, and how many user logins there were. And the Panoply platform is, this is the amount of data you're going to use, and this is what you're going to be charged. Brilliant. I'm almost sold on that concept alone. I'm good. But then you add in, I can pull in from a number of different data sources, which you can sort of tell. I'm talking about our medical record. I'm talking about Kronos. We use Dynamics for our accounting system. So I got to connect to all these different places. And Alteryx will do that to some extent, but there are other times when maybe I just want to bypass that and load the data in and worry about manipulating it afterwards. Sort of that, instead of extract, transform, and load, extract, load, and transform, right? That's what we were going for. So that's really where Panoply got us, is rethinking then at that point, when I go back to rebuild the data warehouse, do we really need to use Alteryx for everything? And we said, we probably don't. We could probably just load it directly and then do the manipulation later. So that was another kind of epiphany for us, and us also being flexible and not getting stuck doing things the way we used to always do them, and start thinking about improving it and moving data quicker. So that was another huge one. Yeah. Last one is, so my kids and I watched Ghostbusters 1 and 2. So the opening scene in the first one, when they're in the library and there's that librarian ghost, freaked me out when I was a kid. And my sons laughed their heads off when they saw that. I was like, how are you not scared? It was like one of the scariest things I've ever seen. So when this presentation came together, I of course remembered Bill Murray's quote from that movie. And whenever I talk about Power BI, I'll get a ton of feedback about how Power BI sucks and Tableau is better. So just know it doesn't matter what you're doing with Panoply. You can connect either of them to it, plus Looker and all the others. And in fact, I use Tableau personally. So I use Power BI for our users out in the field because it's an easy platform for them to understand without having to be trained on how to use it. It's just very intuitive. But when I'm doing very in-depth analytics, I tend to use Tableau for that because it's got a little bit more powerful internal workings to be able to manipulate visuals the way I want them to, that Power BI doesn't have. So this is my way of saying it's a both and. Yes, solution here is both of them can be work together, and hopefully there won't be mass hysteria, all of that. But that would be my ideal solution, is to have both of them there.
So yeah, while we're there, top distinguishing factors. I think this is again like the Python and R debate between Power BI and Tableau. How do you distinguish when you hammer a nail versus screw a screw?
Yeah, and you're leading to, we talked about YouTube. I want to do a whole, why would you do one versus the other versus Alteryx, all of these, what makes them separate. For us, the big wins on Power BI is I'll say, I'm going to use the word universally cloud-based. I know there's a desktop builder, and we use the desktop builder to develop, but users have no idea what that is. They think it's all in the cloud because that's where they access it. The controls are very simple. Power BI's platform works on your phone and tablet, Android, iPhone, doesn't matter. Because the cloud comes with it naturally, your user license includes the cloud, includes the mobile app, all of that stuff is there. They've embedded Power Query. That's part of it. So it's got some great natural features that just come along with getting users to use. That's another theme, right? Just make sure your users can actually use it. On the flip side, and I could be totally wrong on Tableau, but there's a little bit more of a capital outlay to say, I'm going to have the Tableau licenses for my developers, then I have to have the server. Where's the server going to be hosted? Is it on the cloud or is it on premise, right? Then there's a cost associated with that. The usability and controls, remember, most of my users are nurses. These are not technical people. They have 5 seconds to get the data they want or they're moving on. So I can't have them spend a lot of time looking at Tableau versus Power BI. They just gotta, boom, know the answer and move on. So that's from a user standpoint, that's where I go with Power BI. However, if you're an analyst and other analysts are gonna be consuming what you're doing, then I would go with Tableau. It has a lot more fine-tuned control over the way you want visuals to look. Some people hate DAX and Power BI and they prefer the scripts and functions you can write in Tableau. I tend to agree. mQuery blows my mind in Power BI. I'm like, I need a whole master's degree in this to understand how this thing works, where Tableau is a little bit easier to use from that standpoint. So that's sort of where I break it up. They both have really good data sources. And for Tableau's part, there's Tableau Prep. So you can use that to do some of what Power Query does, not to the extent that Power Query does it, but it does some data prep before you get the data ready. So that's my take on it. Of course, it's just my opinion.
No, that's, I think, a very valid opinion. So if your users are more concerned with keeping patients alive, perhaps choose Power BI. If your audience is more of people keeping interesting analysis alive, probably go with Tableau. So,
yeah, like our finance and accounting team, they are Excel gurus. They know Excel way better than I do. They're more of a Tableau user.
Interesting.
They're way more comfortable. And Power BI, so I think the comment one of them made, Power BI looks like Fisher Price toys. That's what he said to me. And I said, yeah, and our nurses love it, so we're going to keep using it. If you want to build in Legos and constructs and really detailed stuff, that's Tableau. But the Fisher Price toys are Power BI, and that's no disrespect. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but the analogy, you get the difference between the two on what they're
absolutely
supposed to do. So yeah.
Totally.
Okay. I think, last slider here. I know I'm looking at the time. I got like 10 minutes left here. So I couldn't help but put a Nickelback reference in here.
Thanks.
This was my zero to hero comment, which was as soon as we started using Panoply, Outbreak hit and we had to quickly spin something up. So what we did was, this is a screenshot from Panoply where you can see the tables that we loaded. We actually started using the schemas as well, so we could limit what certain users could see based on what schema they had access to, and then also built out custom views so that people could look at like the deaths in the facility versus the hospital, and who was diagnosed with COVID, had a test, and thankfully recovered. Right, so that's really where we were going. And then we just attach that to Power BI. So this is a screenshot of what our Power BI report looks like just from a couple of days ago. Like everybody else, we're experiencing a bit of a spike. I've had to blur out for HIPAA reasons, patient names and dates. But yeah, this. I mean, it's a huge win for us to go from our vendor isn't going to create an infection control module for this. So what do? Oh, put it in Excel and then let the data guy worry about it, which is what they usually do to me. so point Panoply at it, load it in, and this is an example of this is a fill and kill. We don't do incremental loading here because we're only looking at 4,000 rows of data. We don't need the incremental. Let's just get rid of everything and do a wholesale reload, and that works fine in this example. There's I think 13 different Power BI tabs that are connected to this report, so we can look at the data a bunch of different ways.
So as much as I was paying attention to that, I couldn't stop appreciating this meme that you used. For those of you who are listening to this as if it is a podcast, it is a picture of the guy's name I forget, but he's the lead singer from Nickelback, and it's him holding a picture that has a chart on it, and it says, "Look at this COVID graph." And I'm not going to be the one to sing that verse, but I mean, I'm not. If you're unafraid to, go ahead.
No, I won't even try. Yeah, I can't. Is it Chad Kroger? Is that the?
I think you nailed it. Good.
Okay.
Good.
I had to Google it. Sorry, I'll be perfectly honest. I had to Google it. But yeah, that's as I'm creating stuff, the things that I stumble across, you have to scroll a lot to find it and ones that fits. But hey, man, you find it, it works. All right, so I think this is sort of the last place I'll go to is what's like the end game on all of this is being able to do really cool stuff. So now that I've got the reports dealt with and the loading is taken care of, there's no errors, everything's working brilliantly. What do I do? And that gave us the ability to go do predictive analytics. And so we use another vendor called DataRobot. It's an automated machine learning platform. And we pull now our data from Panoply. We used to pull it from our on-prem data warehouse. And it was just as simple as opening up whitelisting an IP address on the DataRobot side, which they did for us. And then we were able to pull in that data. And so we started doing even more predictions than we did before. We already were doing readmission. Then we started doing falls and pressure ulcers and a bunch of other stuff like turnover that was more operations related. So all those like mundane menial tasks out of the way, now we can do some other cool stuff.
Yeah, and out of curiosity, how long did it take? So from day zero, making the shift and introducing, hey friends, we got this thing, Panoply. We're going to go through the whole checklist of how to migrate into this point where you're getting results out of DataRobot into the kind of the interface that they need to be in. What did that time frame look like?
I think we had the after we got the IP whitelisted, there was I don't know 2 days to do that. No work on our side, but they did that. Another maybe day to make sure the data was coming in correct. It was probably less than that. And then building the models in DataRobot is another day or two. And then building the output, which is sort of that Power BI report that says this patient is likely to be a readmission. This one isn't. I would say 3 or 4 days. So all told, it was less than 2 weeks, maybe a week and a half to get that all built, which for a machine learning model is insane that you would be able to build a machine learning model that quickly.
Absolutely.
There's a whole nother discussion about predictive analytics at DataRobot and making sure our predictions are accurate and how people are using them. But to your point, Trevor, the main thing is even getting the data in there clean, ready to go and build a model in just a couple of days is mind blowing.
And out of curiosity, how do they write back the data? Where do they write the data to that Power BI gets access to?
Yeah, so this is the one thing we have not modified yet, because when you do a deployment in DataRobot, it's an API endpoint, and you tell the API when you call it how you want it to store the data. Now we still use Alteryx for that actual API call. We send that directly to the Power BI service. So, which is another, like from a scalability standpoint, Power BI becomes a little bit of a data store in a sense, We didn't want those back in Panoply yet. We do at some point. We are going to put them back there, but we wanted that to be lightning fast. Like as soon as you hit the API, it goes right into Power BI, and so it's a Power BI data store.
That makes a ton of sense. Yeah, no, I think that is. I mean, everybody out there is trying to put. I think I'll use the words of the census founder. Put data on offense. So you know. Isn't that great? Like I'm like, how did we come up with that? But I mean, anything that you can do to get data and make it super leverageable, get it to the front lines, and even allow them to do more than just learn about it. You know, that's fantastic. So it's a really exciting thing to see. You know, given that this is a new thing for you, I'm sure you have a bucket list of about 400 things that you want to do. What are you excited about in terms of applying machine learning to the data that you're using?
Yeah, so our next big project is forecasting, and so it's binary classification and regression are very different problems than forecasting. And classification, you know, accuracy is a concern, but we also want to know why. So what's actionable, and there's a whole philosophy around this, but basically I want to know if this person's likely to have a fall in the next couple of days. Why is that? Is it because they have the wrong assistive device? Is it because they're on a medication that makes them dizzy? Are they too weak? Maybe their personality, they're trying to do too much before they've actually regained strength. And then mitigating that, once we know what the likely cause is going to be, then we can go ahead and stop it. Now, I'm having the movie Minority Report. I think there's a book first, like pre-crime, the division of pre-falls, right? And then that's one part of it. That's actually kind of clear to us on how we do it. Forecasting is its own beast. Forecasts, I really like. John Foreman had this book called Data Smart, and in there he said all your forecasts are wrong. Just deal with it. And we know that we're not using the forecast to predict a census. We want to use the forecast to predict when it falls out of where, like a 95% confidence interval. If it comes out of that range, something has happened in our market, and we need to adjust to it. So we're not necessarily saying, you know, 3 days from now we'll have 5,000 patients, we're fine. It's saying that the market is in decline. What do we need to do? And that's our next project, is around those time series forecast problems.
No, I think that's brilliant. I think that kind of ties back to the broader theme of, like, if you're thinking about this between some bandwidth, some what was your word you used? I'm sorry, I'm just blanking. Of the
not just the scale, but
sorry, so I got it. The confidence interval is that you're not trying to be perfect, you're trying to be right. Like you're in that space, and if you're trying to be perfect, it doesn't, you know, it takes forever, and it may not scale, but being right and being quick is actually achievable.
Yeah, it's when you hang out with folks that do binary classification or regression, and then folks that do time series, you quickly see that these two worlds are very different. And it's kind of amazing, because you're like, well, it's a prediction, right? And they'll tell you it's not a prediction, it's a forecast. And so you're like, I see what you did there. Because if you're just a forecast, you can be wrong. It's okay. Ask the weatherman, right? That's how it works. So that I'm excited about being able to do that. It's something we haven't done, so it'll be fun.
Well, great. I mean, we're at the minute left mark. I want to open this up opportunity for anybody who has any questions about anything he's talked about today. But otherwise, I think if I recall correctly, there was a plug slide for your side project here, or
yes, my shameless plug, of course. So yeah, and I know that you mentioned Alex was on earlier, and he reached out to me through YouTube, and so yes, I'm going to be doing more content, not just around Alteryx and Power BI, but also around Panoply. So I'm going to plug it. Go ahead and go out to the channel and subscribe. Everyone says make sure you click that bell up at the top if you want to be notified. And so I actually just did a video yesterday. I put a new one out. So all of that is starting to ramp up, and there'll be more content. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I think one thing, my favorite thing about your channel is that it's very clear that it's an interactive channel. People have questions, you're answering questions. So, you know, there's not only are you a leader, you're also a teacher. And I think everybody, you know, as we've noticed here today, that it's just, you're just a fountain of good information. And he's
I try to share. Keeping up with comments is not easy. It's its own project every night to go in and when people ask something, try and answer as best you can.
Scalability, man.
I need a bot for that. I gotta write a chat bot.
A predictive bot. You can do this, no problem.
Yeah.
Anyways, Nathan, thank you so much for joining us today. We've got a whole bunch of people who stuck around and listened through all about learning about forecasting and prediction. I'm sure a lot of these folks will be clicking that bell at any time in the next couple of days. For those of you still here, of course, we will follow up with a recap summary of the webinar included with videos, probably with most of the garbage that I'm saying cut out of it. And then, and finally, yeah, check out his YouTube channel. So,
got it. Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Nathan, and thanks for all for joining. And
my pleasure.
have a great day. Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Take care, everyone.